Yeah, well, the latest round of figures for the madness that's taking place in the Channel I've dropped, and you guessed it, it's not pretty reading, because more than half of modern slavery claimants arriving by small boat across the English Channel are Albanian. Confirmation, I suspect, of what a lot of us thought was going on anyway. That's according to the latest government figures, and they've been analysed meticulously by Migration Watch UK, and it found that in the first half of 2022, people from the Eastern European nation accounted for most modern slavery claimants. That's among those who arrived in the UK via small boats, so across the Channel. It comes in the same week that Rishi Sunak vowed they'll make it harder for people to come to the UK illegally, that they won't be allowed to stay, apparently, and harder for them to use modern slavery laws to remain in the country. Joining me now, I'm very pleased to say so, is someone who was involved in analysing those government figures, and that's Jeremy Hutton, who's a researcher at Migration Watch UK. Jeremy, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Lots to unpack here. Firstly, though, it would appear as though a loophole is being used, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. So the reason Albanians are focused on is because there are all sorts of people who do make modern slavery claims or are referred. But the thing with Albanians is they come from what is clearly quite a safe country. You know, it's a NATO member, they're trying to join the EU, they're a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. So that makes it very clear that something is going wrong when over half of the people claiming to be modern slaves or being referred are from this country. Yeah,
and I spoke to a former head of UK Border Force a little bit earlier on, and he was saying to me that actually it's quite easy to claim modern slavery. What is a modern slave? What's the actual definition, or indeed the terminology that you would have to do to try to pass yourself off as a modern slave?
So there are various categories, such as human trafficking, which can involve someone being trafficked into the country for certain purposes. There's forced labour. So someone coming from Albania, as a specific example, could be, in theory, manipulated into working on, say, a cannabis farm in the UK. And in that sense, maybe they could be a genuine modern slave. But the thing is, in that case, is that if they need protection, it shouldn't necessarily be in the UK where they've been exploited, having entered legally. It should be back in Albania.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people would agree with that. And the numbers are stark. I believe that it's around a 42% increase, something like that, from the year before, something that presumably, unless we get to grips with this, will be set to rise again. How would you go about stopping this? Rishi Sunak has spoken about reforming the modern slavery laws.
Yes, we welcomed his speech in, I think it was December, about these reforms that he wants to do. And they sound great on the face of it, but of course, it's one thing to talk the talk, it's another thing to walk the walk. And international human rights laws, and the ones that the UK has specifically made up for itself, and the modern slavery ones in particular, are very difficult to reform. You have to be very careful not to overstep the mark and walk that very fine line.
It's an interesting one, and it is a big debate, this, and it is a big discussion for a lot of people, because at the same time as people don't want someone who's genuinely being trafficked here to just be deported back to Albania, if there is a reality, and I think it is a reality, that there is a loophole here that is being used and abused by a load of people who aren't actually modern slaves in order to, at the taxpayer's expense, live here and work here or do whatever, not work here in many cases, then is it worth actually closing that loophole altogether, even if some people unfortunately do suffer as a result? And I've been putting a poll on my own Twitter here. Should we refuse all asylum applications from Albania? So far, 95% of people say yes. Where do you stand on that? Should we refuse all asylum applications from Albania, do you think?
It's a little bit hard to say because of the giant asylum backlog that the large influx of Albanians has added to substantially. That makes it harder to know how many are actual genuine claimants from the end point of the process. However, of those that have been processed, most of them do get refused asylum and do get returned to Albania if possible. So it would certainly be more efficient, but there might be a case for certain extreme cases receiving protection.
And I think it speaks widely to what a soft touch Britain is regarded as just generally now, really. And yes, I was pleased with Rishi Sunak's 5 points, which you can obviously just condense down into 3, which is basically the economy, the NHS and illegal immigration. I was slightly concerned about Keir Starmer because I spoke to a former Labour Party special advisor on this show yesterday, and he was saying adamantly the vast majority of people, they just care about what price a loaf of bread is at the shops. And people do care about that. But I think people also care, Jeremy, about their local hotel being commandeered by the Home Office or Serco or whatever, and local resources. The Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, for example, has had to find £1 million this year just to deal with people who are at least claiming anyway to be children and are therefore in their social care system. And the taxpayers' money that is being drained when it comes to what's going on in the Channel is vast, isn't it?
Absolutely, and this does have a very clear effect on the cost of living. It forms an effect in the taxes you pay. Money is being spent on housing illegal immigrants instead of social services, like you say. On businesses, it has a big knock-on effect. Hotels are not employing as many people as they could because they can just, let off a lot of staff and keep on a skeleton crew to house these migrants. And then that also has a knock-on effect on tourism and other businesses down the line. So the economic effects are massive, and I think that has been rather underexplored.
Do you think our politicians are trying to mask a lack of political or maybe even ideological will to deal with this with, well, I suppose, technical details, saying, we've got to go through all of these issues to fix the laws, or we're really doing everything that we can? In your opinion, as someone who's at Migration Watch UK, who looks at these numbers, devastating numbers, on a daily basis, goes through them with a fine-tooth comb, could this be sorted if you had someone in power who really wanted to sort it?
Well, in theory, any government can do almost anything it wants. Of course, we've signed up to numerous international laws over the past 50, 60 plus years that have muddied the water quite a lot and made things quite difficult. But ultimately, the British government is sovereign and does have the power to do these things if it so wishes. It's just got to decide whether it really wants to.
OK, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot slightly here. I don't want to turn it into too much of a Channel migrant-based sweepstake, but the numbers that are going to come in the course of this year, we reported here on GB News, I think we had exclusive images initially anyway, of the first known groups of people who made their way across the Channel in 2023. Are you expecting it to be an increase, another record year or not?
I reckon so. The more that come, the more see that they can come.
OK, fair enough. Clear and concise. Thank you very, very much, Jeremy. Great to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. That's Jeremy Hutton there of Migration Watch. He's a researcher at Migration Watch UK. Just reacting to those numbers, I will recap them for you very quickly if you're just joining us, which is now more than 50% of those claiming to be victims of modern slavery who entered the UK by small boat, i.e. across the Channel, are from Albania. That's in relation, of course, to another massive record influx of people who crossed the Channel last year. Supposedly, depending on what figures you read, around 2% of the entire male population of Albania is now currently here, which might mean it's quite a good time to still be a man in Albania, but we'll leave that there.